4 people have been convicted of being part of a satanic sex cult in West Wales, whose activities included... Swansea Crown Court was told that Colin Batley, who's 48, set himself up as a high priest of the cult and modelled himself on the infamous occult practitioner Aleister Crowley, who...
This is the story of Colin Batley, who was the leader of a cult coming from Kidwelly in Wales. Batley terrorized and coerced children This is a story that includes satanic themes and children being abused, so please consider this a warning. Now this is quite a rare case, so there's no images of the children involved and only a handful of images regarding the suspects. There may be quite a few curse words, keep that in mind because we are dealing with a sick motherfucker. So if you do end up liking this video, please subscribe. Please also subscribe to my second channel and follow me on Instagram, DM me that you're from the crime channel. All the links are in the description. Now in the intro, you saw the medieval castle of Kidwelly. Well, Kidwelly is a seaside city in Wales, and on the face of it, it is not the most likely setting for a satanic child abuse ring. Yet it was here where former security guard Colin Batley, who's now 59 years old, established a cult. It was a depraved cult which forced and young adults to have sex in horrific circumstances. As ordinary law-abiding families in the place of Batley went along with their daily lives, Colin established a group so sick that even Satan himself may reject them. Now in 2011, the full story and the full details of everything that happened came alight as Colin was jailed for 36 years. But the roots to what happened in Kidwelly started some 20 years prior when Londoner Colin Batley moved there. In the 1990s, he established a homemade cult to which he was considered the high priest. See, Colin and his wife Elaine, they had moved to Wales, and there were 2 other people that joined them, Jacqueline Marling and Shelley Miller, who lived on the same street. They were also part of the cult. Now Colin claimed he was inspired by the works of Aleister Crowley, who was a Satanist that died in 1947. The female members of the sect, they actually referred to Colin as my lord, which in this case is no different than twat. See, the women in the cult, they referred to the house as the church, and they had a tattoo of Horus, the Egyptian god, on their arm. This was in commemoration on the fact that Aleister Crowley worshipped Horus. Cult members would dress in hooded robes during occult rituals, which usually took place before group sex. A number of houses on the same street were used for similar rituals in part of their, swinging lifestyle. Now, as you can see, Colin, well, he wasn't the best looking lad, right? He had missing teeth, but he did read his own Bible. This was called the New Law of Man, written by Aleister Crowley. It is also referred to as the Book of Law. Colin would also read the Equinox of the God and the Book of Magic, all written by Aleister Crowley. In many ways, you can consider Aleister Crowley the prophet of Colin Batley. Colin would order cult members to have sex together, and he would ensure there were other members there to film it. But it is believed that all the recorded material had been destroyed prior to Colin's arrest. He was apparently tipped off by friends in London that the police are about to raid him 2 days before he was raided. Colin, who was 48 at the time, during the trial in Swansea Crown Court, which lasted around 5 weeks, he was said to have used the cult as a form of brainwashing to justify abuse to his victims. One schoolboy, who during the trial had now become an adult, he confirmed that Batley had repeatedly abused him when he was younger. A schoolgirl, who again during the trial had become an adult, she said that Batley forced her into joining the cult. She was scared for her life. With this same girl, Colin told her that a cult assassin would come and take her life if she didn't join. In specific regard to this little girl, when she encountered Colin at the house, it started with a 10-minute lecture on what the cult was, then they had sex. The schoolgirl went on to confirm that she was ordered to go to the house regularly, where on each occasion she would have sex with Colin. She was also taken to satanic sex parties where she would be passed around with other people having sex with them. During some of these parties, there was an altar with a gobbler of red wine. There was also an incense burner and salted bread, and around this altar, the members would take off their robes and have sex. Now, one of the victims during the trial gave evidence. This was via a video link, and they said that all Colin had to do was click his fingers and the women would strip naked. And this same victim confirmed that when she was 11 years old, Colin told her, if you don't have sex with me, you will go to the abyss, which is another way of him saying you'll go to hell. The victim went on to say, I did not want to do anything Colin asked. I didn't want anything to do with it. But in the cult, what Colin said happened, and what Colin did, we did. During the cult, Colin also got a girl pregnant, but he stopped the girl from having an abortion because to him, this was a child of the occult. He was proud. These perverted events took place over several decades in Kidwelly, Wales, and sometimes in London. Colin and Elaine actually had a son by the name of Damien, and their house was the scene of his death when a sex act went wrong. On February the 1st, 2008, Damien was performing a sex act. He was filming himself on his mobile phone, and then he accidentally hung himself. One of the family members found Damien in the house, hanged, and his life had gone. And have you also noticed how he named his son Damien, the Omen? You see, you're painting the picture now? The police at that time were called. They found the mobile phone and they went through the video footage of this hanging sex act. And the coroner at the time did confirm this was an accidental hanging. The coroner confirmed there was no evidence to suggest this was a suicide. The coroner went on to say there was no suspicious circumstances and no one else was involved. After the trial and the convictions of Colin, one of the neighbours who used to live near Colin in Kidwelly in Wales, they said that when Damien died and they had the funeral, Colin was laughing, joking, acting as if nothing had happened. He didn't have a care in the world. It was the sort of behaviour that others wouldn't comprehend. During the trial, Colin laughed at the accusations and denied them all. Colin denied that he was the leader of a cult. Colin did admit that he had an open sexual relationship with his wife, including other cult members, one in particular who was known as second in command, Jackie Marling, whom he had an affair with for many years, which his wife didn't know about. Talk about being a kinky bastard. And it was in 2010 where this cult was on the police's radar for the first time. See, two victims, a man and a woman, were brave enough to go to the police and tell them everything that happened. During the trial, 5 complainants, whose names have been hidden for security reasons, confirmed their encounters at the house. They were lured into the house and then subjected to sexual attacks. Colin also forced some of the cult members, particularly the younger girls, to engage in prostitution where he took a 25% cut. The trial heard that Colin was able to purchase a £21,000 caravan where he put down a cash deposit of £3,000 when he had no obvious income. Colin claimed that I'm not this high priest cult leader, I breed dogs and I only earn £10,000 a year. This is what he told the court during the trial. He also claimed that some of his money came from gambling, on dogs and horses. It also emerged that leading up to the trial, Colin and Elaine had separated. While she gave evidence, she accused her husband of laughing at her. It also goes to show that when shit hits the fan, people turn on each other. I just think that's an interesting observation. During the trial, Elaine said, I feel embarrassed to be married to him. And she also said, I've changed. This is to Colin. I've changed. You won't get the better of me now. Imagine taking 30 years to change, you fucking idiot. Of the marriage, Elaine said that one time, Colin, he sent her a photo. This photo was from the married wife section of some pornographic magazine. And it was this section of the magazine that helped them meet other couples for, group activities. After the defendants were taken down the steps in the court case, and after they were given their verdicts, Elaine shouted, I fucking hate you, to Colin. She was crying and sobbing. The trial was so harrowing that the jurors were offered counselling. Now, Colin claimed that his late father, who was a lorry driver, abused him as a child. Colin was convicted of 35 offences, which included numerous child crimes. Now, Colin was sentenced to an indeterminate time, under public protection laws, but it was said that he would have to serve a minimum of 11 years before he would be considered for parole. Now, I understand the 11 years had passed, and regarding parole, they told him to fuck off. But even still, 11 years and then he can think about freedom? That's fucked up. Elaine herself was convicted for 8 years for indecency with children. As for Jackie Marling and Shelley Miller, who were two of the main accomplices in this cult, they both received 5 years each. There was also a woman by the name of Annabelle. That's not her real name, that's her pseudonym. She wrote a book called The Devil on My Doorsteps, explaining the entire story. You can get it on Amazon. Now, I can sit here and I can give you a full psychoanalysis of Aleister Crowley, because I've studied his books. I've studied all religions, like of all forms. Just because I just find them all curious, and I can tell you how Aleister was full of shit. But I don't think that applies in this case. I mean, if I was to take one look at Colin, I wouldn't think to myself, well, there's a sophisticated individual. Like, if you were to speak to someone who was a Satanist or who believed in Satanism or even some of Crowley's works, you can have a very intelligent conversation with them, because they've probably done the work themselves, they've probably done the research and come to the conclusion, this is the best way for me. But that wasn't the case with Colin. Colin was just a dirty bastard. I mean, just take a look at Colin. Do you think he has any idea about Judas Iscariot, Pontius Pilate, the inner workings of Jesus Christ, forward 200 years, Tertullian? I'm not going to sit here and try and begin to understand why Colin did what he did, because it doesn't fucking matter to me. This guy should never ever be released from prison. Maybe him being eligible for parole was just a token gesture. That's the law. For some people, there are certain things they do where the full force of the law has to be thrown at them. I don't give a fuck if they're in Europe and the human rights laws there are maybe less, like the prisoners have more rights than say here in America, right? But at least in America, despite what you think of the incarceration system, at least when people fuck up, they get fucked. They are severely punished. And cases like Colin Batley and his 3 fucking bitches deserve the full force of the law. They should be in solitary confinement for the rest of their lives, and they should be starved. I don't know what the case is with the other 3 women. They've probably been released because it seemed like maybe they've served their time or maybe their parole got rejected. I don't know. Either way, fuck these 4 individuals. Why don't you comment? Tell me what you think.